It's late in this season, but the Saginaw Spirit ready to make their first trek to Barrie this season. Their one and only trek to the Central Division. And for today, I figured why not check in again with play-by-play voice Dillon Clark, who last year quite busy preparing for the Memorial Cup, and of course the Spirit were the host team for that, and going all the way to the Mem Cup final, and ended up defeating the London Knights with quite the rivalry brewing there between Saginaw and London last year. And Dillon. That experience for you as a broadcaster, that must have been quite the memory.
Yeah, a lot of memories made that 10, 12 days. The final game itself was one that I know I'll remember for the rest of my life, and just the little moments. I think when you spend as much time as we did around here putting an event together like that, you kind of in the chaos of it all, you try to take the little moments and the little beats and just think, wow, this is it's actually happening now. And it's so strange because I've never encountered anything like that before, where you're preparing for something for over a year and then it's done with in under 2 weeks, and you're just kind of sitting around outside afterwards. Once we had the parade the next day, once that was done, we're kind of looking around like, okay, well, what happens now? I think everybody slept for like 16 hours immediately after that. But once that was done, it was a little bit strange. But the final game itself was, I mean, trying to trying to think back and put that into context. I mean, I don't know how much time you want to spend on it, but we were up 3-0 in that game, and then we were holding the best team on paper in the CHL to less than 10 shots on goal. I think for the first half of the game they had three.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of looking around up on the broadcast booth, up on the media level, going, okay, well, what's going on here? And then sure enough, I think Cowan got the first, no, Haltman got the first one, and then it's like, okay, well, there's one, and then Cowan scored, and then Dickinson tied it up, and it was panic mode without trying to let on too much. We were thinking, maybe, or at least I was sitting there thinking, like, this could take a turn for the worse. This could end up being just a horrible outcome for the Spirit, for lack of a better explanation. And then, of course, the late regulation goal by Josh Bloom, and it goes from potential disaster to, I don't know, probably one of the better stories in sports, certainly out of junior hockey, but out of the last 5+ years.
Yeah, that was probably one of the most entertaining Memorial Cup finals we've had in a long time. And even better when it's two OHL teams battling out. You guys had quite the battle in the Western Conference final with the London Knights. As that playoff series already uh, really launched that rivalry into the next chapter.
Yeah, that was one. I mean, this team wanted to win that series so bad, and there was so much pressure on it. I never realized that until being on the inside looking at it. Like, the second that you get the host title stamped onto you, everybody's coming for you, and if you're not looking like the best team at all times, there are naysayers and detractors that are saying, like, well, they shouldn't even be there. So we knew that conference final, that was going to be the biggest test so far. And that second round series against the Sioux, it went 7 games. It was such a meat grinder. And you can look at it a couple of different ways. Saginaw was the only team to beat London at all in the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs. They swept their way through everybody else, and that might not be saying a ton. And would have liked to be able to force it to a game 7, and came close a couple of times. I mean, even that game 6 at the tail end, the last game of the series, that was such a fun game. Despite the result, and there was controversy in that with penalties. It was, the way if you could stack up the conference final up with the round robin game that London beat Saginaw, and then of course the final game as well. There's kind of 3 chapters to the postseason meeting there, and with the hurt and the heartbreak. I still remember sitting at the post game press conference after game 6. Chris Lazary and Braden Hashay facing the media, and just I mean, it was heartbreak for them, and on Chris's part, certainly seeing what all his players went through to get to that point, and to see them come up short and face that defeat that way. It's horrible in the moment to see him go through that, but that was fuel going into the next chapter of things. And I still remember there was time off. I don't remember exactly how many days it was in between. might have been a full week where GM Dave Drinkle said to the guys, go get away, get your heads right, because we got work to do when we come back. But those first practices back, when they did take the ice in preparation for the Memorial Cup, I guess it probably would have been more than a week. But they said right away, that was kind of the word around the rink, was that those were the fastest practices that anybody had been a part of. So, I mean, who knows? That you never know. You can always play the what if game. But that conference final, and the way it shook out and the pain that was associated with it, that was turned into fuel for sure.
And for everybody, they got a day with the Memorial Cup. I was following along on social media. Did you get your own day with the Memorial Cup after the championship?
I didn't get my own day with it. I got little moments with it. There were places where it needed to be shipped around to and delivered from one player to another. And if it had an appearance at one place, somebody would have to take it in between. So I made sure I got a couple of good pictures of it buckled into the front seat of my car. That was kind of a surreal moment. Yeah, and there was one night where it had an appearance the one day, and then I think had to be delivered to a player the next day. So it did spend the night on my kitchen table, which was cool because I kind of forgot about it. And then the next morning you walk out, it's like, oh, that's right. So that's a nice surprise. But no, that thing went on quite the journey over the summer, and just getting to have everybody be a part of it and celebrate. And it's probably the fastest summer I think of anybody's life around here, and excited to get back down to the work here. I mean, we're almost on the cusp of another playoff run here.
Yeah, and for you guys, like you said, it was a quick summer, and the Saginaw Spirit got off to a pretty hot start to this regular season. Was that kind of a carryover with the excitement of what happened at the Memorial Cup?
I think so. I mean, to be honest with you, just because of where we are, um, we're an American team in the Ontario Hockey League, and we had just been through all of that. And I mean, you could make a really good team out of the guys that we lost at the end of last year. Owen Beck, Hunter Haight, Jurian Donovan, Rodwin Denise, those guys go on to play in the American League, and certainly many more. But that kind of in a lot of people's mind, you're going to say, okay, they won't be as good this year. There's going to be a steep drop off. But, people were pleasantly surprised by, I think, Christian Epperson's arrival. That was a massive, massive change in I guess this team's fortunes, so to speak, with him kind of changing his plans as far as what his hockey future was going to be, and makes the fifth round pick that the Spirit spent on him back in 2022 certainly more than worth it, because I think he would have been a first round pick had he been coming to the OHL right away. But getting Epperson was huge, and Michael Misa's domination, for lack of a better term, has really been a major point, because I think that was a big question mark for a lot of people. Was they know they know he's going to take a step in his draft year, but how much of a step, and how long is he going to be able to sustain that? And he's a separate conversation that I know we'll get into a little bit later here. But along with that, I think a lot of people, they didn't know. I mean, even internally, I don't think we knew exactly what Carson Harmer and Jacob Kluche could bring to the equation. And right now they're 1 and 2 in rookie scoring, and they are 17. They spent last year in Chatham with the Maroons, or Jacob did. Carson in Stratford with the Warriors. He was the rookie of the year. But I think a lot of players took bigger steps and were more ready to fill in for the roles left by Hunter Haight and Owen Beck and that sort of thing. Yeah, I think we pleasantly surprised a lot of people and ourselves, and it was a lot of figuring things out in especially November and December. But ever since the calendar flipped, this is looking like a hockey team that's ready to go for it again.
And you guys also got the services of Chernyshov from the San Jose Sharks. What a surprise that was! Just seeing how he just lit things up right away. It seemed like he's been with the team all season.
Yeah, as I was throwing 18 names at you there, I knew I was forgetting something. And yeah, Igor's been a massive difference maker. And that was the biggest question around here that people would ask, is like, hey, when's Igor showing up? When's Igor showing up? Like, who's this Chernyshov kid? Because they'd heard a lot about him. It was a big deal when he was drafted and signed. And I still, during the import draft, our GM Dave Drinkle and our assistant GM Brian Prout, they said, hey, we asked if we could be around with the cameras for the process of it. And they kind of looked at us and like, well, it's just me and Brian sitting at the computer. We're like, well, yeah, but it would be cool to get a little behind the scenes. And they said okay. And I was really glad that that they let the cameras in for that because they were so excited for the player that they were going to pick, and his identity was a secret. They're like, I don't want to tell you, I don't want to say his name because that'll jinx it and all that. But I remember the Sioux Greyhounds picked before us, and when they submitted their pick and it popped up on the screen and it wasn't the guy that the Spirit wanted to pick, there was a pretty good celebration in there. And then I see Dave start typing in Igor Chernyshov. So I'm thinking, all right, well, we better figure out what this kid is. And it's not too often that you get to plug a guy that's played in the KHL All-Star game into your lineup. And it took longer than obviously would have been ideal. You would have loved to have him in from the start of the season, and who knows where things would be at this point if we would have had Igor in from day one. But obviously, you don't want to rush something like recovery from an off-season shoulder surgery. So he gets back in, and he's been just shy of 3 points per game ever since he comes into the lineup. I mean, it's not very often, regardless of level or the hype around a player. It's not very often that they live up to it and kind of smash through it right away. I mean, I think Michael Misa did that in his rookie season, kind of right off the bat, but he had ups and downs. And for Igor coming in, you see why they picked him you see why San Jose picked him with the first pick of the second round.
And it seems as though he really complements Michael Misa, who has been lights out this year, expected to be maybe a top 5 pick in the NHL draft. How has that been like, being able to cover this team and just watching Misa's development leading up to this NHL draft?
Well, I've said it. I mean, really, since I got here in November 2022, I've kind of been spoiled with just the level of talent and the quality of players and human beings that I get to cover and watch and call games for every night. I mean, I started to realize that I was kind of spoiled with it when you look at the box score at the end of a night and he only has one assist or something there, and you can say the same for Zane Parekh. And you're thinking, oh, all right, a bit of an off night for him. It's like there are guys that would love to have an assist on a night like this, let alone Michael's had at least 5 or 6 3-point performances and way more, but he's had a handful of 4-point performances off the top of my head, and all the milestones that he's set here in the last little while. And he's on the cusp of being the franchise's all-time leading scorer in quite a bit fewer games than it took the guy who said it, Ryan McDonough. So yeah, that's how that you're kind of spoiled when you look down and you see only a 1 or 2 point night. That's an off night for them by their standards. So you wait to see how long it can be maintained, because you kind of wait for everybody has a bit of a drop off at some point. But in Michael's case, it hasn't gone anywhere. And to your point about Chernyshov being a perfect fit for Misa, you can say the same for Christian Epperson. Really, from the first day that any sort of organized game was played involving those two, I think back to we had the blue and white scrimmage at training camp. Those two were on a line together, and they seemed to have a connection that was far beyond what they had with anybody else. And the same can be said for Igor Chernyshov, who's, I think, honestly, still getting his feet a little bit wet here, despite the fact that he's, like I said, almost a 3-point per game player. You see the intent. There are plays that he wants to make, or things that he wants to do and moves that he wants to make. But again, he's 11 games back, 12 games back after a year off, really, from playing in a game situation. So he's still kind of getting back up to his standards, and especially in the first couple of games, you could see there were things he wanted to do, and his body just wasn't quite to what he expected, and it was kind of frustrating for him. And that's slowly going away. He's feeling more comfortable, and you could put any of those guys, Misa, Epperson, or Chernyshov, on any line on this hockey team, and they're going to have success, and they're going to make the players around them better. But it's how do you not put those 3 players together?
Oh, for sure. And even when you look at the stats right now, it's really no surprise with the talent that Saginaw is leading the way in goal scoring. But it kind of surprised me a bit seeing that the team's leading the league in penalty minutes. What's the deal with that? Is this a team that's trying to play that aggressive Western Conference style? Is that what's going on here?
I don't think so. I've been trying to sift through and figure out why that is. It's hard to chalk it up to any one singular thing. I think some of the, not inexperience, but it is a younger team. Despite the fact that Michael's in his draft year, Zane's draft year +1, Igor as well. There are a lot of youngsters on this team, and I mean, especially on the back end. I think it was real noticeable. We had pretty much our entire left side in Braden Hashe, Rodwin Denisio, and Dorian Donovan move on from last year. So those are some older players as far as this league is concerned, and that opens up opportunities for guys like Graydon Jones and Hayden Barge. We just got Xander Valeris from Kingston. They are being put into, I guess, more elevated roles in a quicker amount of time. And I'm not saying that it's just on the part of the defenseman, but there's just a little bit of I don't know, trying to catch up to the speed of the game maybe in some situations. And I know the term cowboy gets thrown around here from time to time when I don't know, structure breaks down and they want to kind of freewheel a little bit. And I think maybe some of the cowboy gets into that a little bit. You kind of lose control and take a couple penalties that are maybe not the smartest. But you know what? Just like anything else, if they can iron that out a little bit, and maybe just 5 or 10%, because the penalty kill for most of the season has been certainly top 10, if not top 5. They're sitting right around 6th right now. The power play has been surging up to 2nd in the league last time we played. So special teams are coming around and helping this team out. But to your point, if they can dial back the penalty minutes, I think certainly not going to hurt.
Oh, for sure. And I love the terminology there, the cowboy effect. So I might
I,
have to
I
try and
wish
use
I could
that.
take credit for that. I wish I could take credit for that. That's our head coach, Chris Lazary. Whenever guys start making a little bit too much of their own decisions and maybe ignoring the structure for a play they want to make, that's what he calls it going cowboy. And it was last year's team that was a little bit more guilty of it, but still these guys from time to time.
And we're about 4 weeks away now from the OHL playoffs. Saginaw, it looks like you're going to have home ice advantage in the first round. But talk a bit about the Western Conference picture right now. London, Windsor, Kitchener. It's going to be quite the second round, it appears, with some of these heavyweights and Saginaw right in the thick of it.
Well, yeah, I mean it's hard not to kind of project through to the second round, right? I mean, when you have in London, Windsor, and Kitchener's case, they are so far ahead of everybody else. Saginaw's kind of in the not quite the middle, because there's a bit of a gap in points between them and Erie. So again, you would think the odds and the percentages are, like you said, home ice in the first round, but nothing's a guarantee. And everybody else throughout the back, there's not much space separating ninth and 10th from being in a playoff spot. So I mean, it's anybody who can get in, and you want to say, okay, the top 4 teams should probably be able to advance on to the second round. But we're not too far removed from the Windsor and Kitchener series back in 2023. So I think that sticks in a lot of people's minds. And even thinking back to the 2023 playoffs, it feels kind of similar, at least in my eyes, as far as the situation that's kind of shaken out. Is we got Flint in the first round that year. We were the 4, they were the 5, and that was a fantastic first round series. But you kind of go back and you think, all right, well, what if we would have had to go to Flint for Game 7? Would things have been different? Because I think we won. I think we only won 1 out of the 3 games in their building in the playoffs that year. So who knows how things would have been? But that makes it even more important to make sure they do secure home ice against, again, the odds-on favorite is Erie in the first round. Things can change, but that's how it's been. I think going back to Thanksgiving, it's been Saginaw in 4th, Erie in 5th, Erie in 4th, Saginaw in 5th. So that's going to be a really exciting series if that is the way it shakes out. And then let's say they do advance on through. I mean, take your pick, London, Kitchener, or Windsor. And like I said, it's hard not to say that those are the teams moving on to the next round. It could be anybody, but there's no easy draws in the West.
No, and it's everyone's doing the scoreboard watching right now, and it's I know
Yeah.
the East is pretty intense right now too. So this is the best time of year for junior hockey fans following along with what's going on in each conference. And Dylan, I appreciate you coming on today talking about the Spirit, and good luck the rest of the way.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. We'll see you in a couple of days here.
So that's Saginaw Spirit radio play-by-play voice, Dillon Clark. Always great to catch up with fellow broadcasters around the Ontario Hockey League. And just a reminder, the game Thursday night against Saginaw between the Colts and the Spirit is going to be the Kyle Clifford jersey retirement game. And the ceremony is going to get underway at 6:45 p.m. So if you are going to be at the game in person, you want to make sure you're there before maybe around 6:30 because it's going to be a pretty full arena. Or if you're watching the game on television, we'll actually have the pregame show starting at 6:30 on Rogers TV. It's going to be a fun night as we put put another number in the rafters at the Sideline Arena. So again, thank you very much for all your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Talk to you soon.